A young boy was walking to the local Walgreens. He was 16, and he was walking to the Walgreens with his friend who was 14, and they were approached by two other guys, and within minutes, one was dead and one was seriously shot and wounded. And I remember I was working on another project on poverty that year, and Steve came to my desk and said, Bowdoin Street, that name sounds familiar because the shooting took place at Bowdoin Street and Geneva Avenue. And we've gone as a newspaper to this neighborhood over the years because of shootings and violence. We don't, and still have not gone back, before the series, in a way that kind of gives the neighborhood a rich and complete picture. We go when there's violence. We cover the violence. We cover the funeral. Cover the people crying. And so we wanted to do something a little differently than what we had done in the past. We wanted to be there. I think I was the one who said, maybe we should live there. Maybe we should live there and just kind of see for ourselves if it's, what it's like to sort of navigate this sort of world. Is it as bad as it seems? And so after Javon was murdered, and we put that other series to bed, in 2012 we launched what we call an intense immersion journalism project, which means we were going to embed our reporters into the neighborhood to live. I lived there for the summer, through the spring and summer, along with Akila Johnson. We had 5 reporters from various backgrounds. Andrew Ryan is the City Hall reporter, and so we were going to follow all the things that the city did to make this neighborhood better, and why wasn't this neighborhood changing. We had Maria Kramer, who covers courts. She covers crime. I write news features for the paper. That's my specialty, and I focus on disenfranchised communities. Who else is doing this? Jenna Russell is also a news features reporter, and Akila Johnson is a general assignment reporter. So we decided that we were going to put this team together and have our data specialists. It ended up being like a 30-member team of reporters and data specialists and videographers and photographers, sort of figuring out and asking one basic question: why does violence persist in this one particular neighborhood? And can we really understand it in any sort of way? And can we bring to life stories about violence, about efforts to stop it, about people who are going through it, in a way that gives our readers a sense of what this community was like? And we were going to do it from the inside. We were going to actually live there. So we spent the first part of the year trying to collect data. And what was difficult about that was that we weren't able to get that because Bowdoin, Geneva is at the edge of all these different neighborhoods, and it's a small slice of the city. 13,000 people seems like a lot, but it wasn't. And there was no one group or even multiple groups that had kept track of the people who lived in this community. So that was really difficult the first part of the year. And the first part of the year, we also decided that we were going to find our cast of characters. And it sounds kind of weird to call people characters, but we needed people to be the vehicle for our stories. And the idea was that we were going to take our readers through this journey and through the journey of the summer. We were told, and we knew this, that the summer is usually the start of the most violent times in the city, and police prepare for an onslaught of crime. And so we were going to be there to witness it. And that's what we are, really, witnesses. So we found a place, we rented a place, we moved in, and I, in my research in trying to find people, I took a walk with Father Doc Conway, and he was in the first part of the series, if you read it. And he's really a really colorful priest. He swears a lot. He's, just a little He's not your typical priest, okay? Let's put it that way. But he took me through the neighborhood, and every house that he felt was off note, he'd point to that house. He'd say, this is a house where the mother is really struggling. We're trying to get her kid a job. He wants a job, but his brother won't let him. This is a quiet street. This is a problem street. And during that walk, that was in February of 2012, he stopped by the Davis's house. And he said, this is where Nate Davis lived. And I had never met them before. I did remember that I did cover Nicholas Formby Davis's funeral in 2010, and I didn't know them, before then. But I thought maybe I should come back to them and see if they'd like to talk. So a couple weeks later, maybe it was a couple of days later, I knocked on the Davis's door. Big Nate poked his head out the window and said, hey, and I said, hey, Meghan Irons from the Globe, I'd love to talk to you. What do you want? He yells down, and I said, come downstairs, I just don't want to yell it out. So he came downstairs, and I said to him, listen, I really was moved by the story of the death of your son, and I want to write about it. And I don't want to do it in a little way. I want to spend some time with you and your family and follow you through the summer. Would that be okay? And he said, all right. And he had a house phone in his hand, and he started dialing as I was making my pitch, as I am like sweating bullets, like, is he going to do this or is he not going to do this? And he called his wife, apparently, and in the middle of me talking with him, he said, oh, yeah, I just saw Bloom out. He was having this separate conversation as I'm talking with him. And finally, he put her on the phone, and I talked with her, and she said she would be okay with me coming back and speaking with them and talking with them. At that moment in February, I didn't know what was in store. I had no idea that in a couple months they were going to be they were going to be, this is I didn't mean to say celebrating, marking the anniversary of their son's death. And that their older son, the one who had survived and they had so much hope for, was in prison because he had watched his brother die, literally in his hand, and he vowed that he would never die like that. He was never going to go out like that. He was going to go out fighting, and he was going to arm himself and protect himself. And he was caught with a gun, and he was in prison. And I had no idea at that time that in a couple of months after meeting them, that the murder trial for Nicholas Formby Davis was going to take place. So I was just happy that I had an invitation to dinner. And I felt part of my job was to build a relationship with this family and do it in a way that doesn't seem intimidating. This was a community that it was used to reporters flocking in when there was a violent situation and then disappearing, and no follow-up or nothing. And so there is a distrust with the media. They don't feel we really care. And so my thing was, I had a time frame, I had to get their stories before the summer. And I also had to sort of let them know that I'm not like that my story is going to be a little different, and that I'm going to really get to know them and really get to know them in an intimate way. And there were a lot of, it was kind of like being in a relationship with somebody who was going through a really, really bad period in time. And so it was up, it was down, they didn't want to talk to me for some points. They wanted to talk to me. It was very, very intense, let's put it that way. So that started our journey. Each of us had people that we wanted to tell, and the journey was going to be, we were going to tell these, in the series, we were going to take our readers through the summer. And we were going to take our readers through a journey with our families. We had the city's efforts. Andrew Ryan did a fantastic job in covering Hendry Street, and Susan Young and Doc Conway, and the efforts that they made to reach out to a young guy we called Tal to get him a job and to get him off the street. And some of the barriers that stood in the way of actually seeing any breakthrough in this particular neighborhood. Akilah Johnson focused on a mother who had 2 sons in rival gangs, and how she basically lost them to the streets, really. And Jenna Russell focused on this garden, and the garden was going to be sort of our symbol of hope for this community, because even though it is true, Bowdoin, Geneva had a lot of violence, and things just pop off like that, and at any minute, a lot of people still consider this home. And so we had to be true to both those things. We moved into a 3-bedroom apartment on Mount Ida Road, which was near the park. I took my dog walking in the mornings, and I saw other people walking their dogs in the mornings. I took him walking at the park and through the neighborhood. We got our laundry done at the laundromat down the street. We had coffee at the little diner. We met people who would live nowhere else in the city. And we saw things that were just very universal. People cared about schooling, they cared about their kids. These things were true, and these things were real. And we witnessed them, and we took note of that. And that was part of our job, being embedded in the community. But there was also something that was very striking, and something that you wouldn't see in other communities. I remember this one community meeting I went to. This woman was telling me that the neighborhood was just beautiful. It's a wonderful neighborhood, I have lovely neighbors. This is a place I've lived here most of my life. I've raised my 2 daughters. One is a lawyer. The other one was doing something, grad school, I think. And then at the same time, she said, and I think I asked her, I said, well, what about the violence? You know, people always ask, well, you know, how do you deal with the violence? She said, the violence, that's just part of it. You know, we're not going to change that. You know, my husband was shot and killed right in front of my house. And it was just like that kind of thing where someone would say, this is a wonderful community, but there's a marker right there. A guy was shot there and killed last week. The idea that you sort of live with violence, but you put it in you put it behind you. It's kind of a survival type thing. And you were finding, it was shocking at first, because for me, if someone was killed right in front of my house, I'm out of there. You know, I'm not there. But for a lot of people, moving just seemed impossible. They were set on making this neighborhood a community in spite of the violence. And it was that sort of survival. You just can't be sad all the time. You can't be crying all the time. You have to live, and you have to live a full and rich life that allowed people in a way to sort of separate those two. Because for the most part, they were not targets of the violence.